Hi there, welcome to my YouTube channel Dhyani Classes. If you are watching my video for the first time, do subscribe my channel, hit the bell icon so that you get notified whenever new video will be uploaded. So in today's video, we will cover the chapter The Rat Trap, written by Selma Lagerlof from class 12 CBSE. So let's get started. Let's talk about the author. Selma Lagerlof was a Swedish writer whose story have been translated into many languages. A universal theme runs through all of them, a belief that the essential goodness in human being can be awakened through understanding and love. This story is set amidst the mines of Sweden, rich in iron ore, which figure large in the history and legends of that country. The story is told somewhat in the manner of a fairy tale. So The Rat Trap is a very beautiful story written by Selma Lagerlof, and through the lesson she is talking about goodness and humanity and tells us that through love and understanding one can bring the goodness to a person. So let's begin with the first line of the chapter now. Once upon a time there was a man who went around selling small rat traps of wire. So here the author is saying once upon a time there was a man. That means there was a man and he used to sell rat traps. That means he used to sell small instrument made by wire which we use to catch hold on the mouse at homes or shops. And he used to go all around and sell rat traps, visiting different places in order to sell small rat traps of wire. Further he says he made them himself at odd moments from the material he got by begging in the stores or at the big farms. So this man used to make rat traps himself at odd moments. That means he never had any specific or particular time or moment to make these rat traps. So whenever he found free time, he used to make it, whether it is night or day, and says from the material he got by begging in the stores or at the big farm. That means he used to collect wire and waste iron materials from the stores or at the big farm, and sometime he used to beg these items from the stores or sometime from the big farms. So in this way he used to collect these things or these items and made his rat traps. But even so, the business was not especially profitable. So here the author is saying that but even so the business was not profitable. That means whatever he used to do was not profitable at all. That means selling rat traps was not up to the mark and he was not able to earn that much money what he was expecting, and says so he had to resort to both begging and petty thievery to keep body and soul together. So in order to fulfill his requirement, he had to resort to both begging and petty thievery. That means he started doing small thefts and he started begging in order to collect more money. And why he used to steal money? Because to keep body and soul together. That means in order to live or survive, he started begging. So he started begging and stealing also. So petty thievery means small thefts, and keep body and soul together means to live or survive. Further he says even so his clothes were in rags, his cheeks were shrunken, and hunger gleamed in his eyes. So this man used to wear rag, that means torn or unwashed clothes only, and his cheeks were shrunken. That means his cheeks were so deep because of not having proper food on time, and says hunger gleamed in his eyes. So after measuring his overall health condition, it was so poor, and it is very clear and vivid to see his eyes that he was always hungry. No one can imagine how sad and monotonous life can appear to such a vagabond. So here the author is saying that for this man life was so boring, and no one can imagine how monotonous life, that means how boring and dull life he was leading. So there was no change in his routine and he used to do same thing every single day. So all the time he used to beg and rob people and then collect the wire and make rat traps and sell them outside the street. So he was such a vagabond, that means he was such a homeless beggar and used to roam here and there and was leading his miserable life, and says who plods along the road left to his own meditation. So while walking from one place to another place, he was not able to walk properly and plods along the road. That means walking with great difficulty, and then left his own meditation. That means after walking miles and miles, he used to lose his own meditation or own thoughts. Further he says, but one day this man had fallen into a line of thought which really seemed to him entertaining. But the author is saying that one fine day this man had fallen into a line of thought. That means one day he was thinking something different and very interesting, which seemed to him very entertaining. So whatever he was thinking was very amusing for him, according to the author. Further, he says he had naturally been thinking of his rat traps when suddenly he was struck by the idea that the whole world about him. So here the author is saying that he had naturally been thinking of his rat traps. That means usually, or he used to think about only rat traps, but this time he was suddenly struck by the idea that the whole world about him. That means he started thinking about the whole world. So he had an interesting idea about the whole world and says the whole world with its lands and seas, its cities and villages was nothing but a big rat trap. So he is saying that the whole world with its land and seas and its cities and villages are nothing but it is a big rat trap, because these places attract human beings. So in this way, it was a very interesting thought that he had come to in his mind, and after thinking about the whole world that it is a big rat trap, he was feeling very happy. So this is the interesting idea that he had got at that time. It had never existed for any other purpose than to set baits for people. So here the author is saying that it had never existed for any other purpose. That means he is talking about the world, and why the world has existed, because it wants to set baits for the people. So what do you mean by baits? That means some pieces of food that is kept inside it as an attraction to attract human being and animals. So this is the only purpose why this world has existed, and says it offered riches and joys, shelter and food, heat and clothing. So here he says that this whole world is providing us with few things to attract, such as riches and joy. That means money and happiness for some period of time, and shelter and food, heat and clothing, and people running behind these things day in and out. And says exactly as the rat trap offered cheese and pork, and as soon as anyone let himself be tempted to touch the bait, it closed in on him, and then everything came to an end. So here he is saying that all these things, such as happiness, money, food and clothing, so these are the main source of attraction, exactly as the rat trap offered cheese and pork. That means people keeps the real cheese and pork inside the rat trap to catch the rats, and as soon as rats enters inside the rat trap, it gets trapped inside the rat trap. So in the same way, the author is saying that as human beings let themselves to be tempted to touch the baits, that means as soon as people run behind these baits, set the world closed on them, and then everything come to an end. So he is saying that as soon as people run behind these things, they get trapped inside the whole world, and everything comes to an end. So that's why he is saying that the whole world is like a rat trap. Further he says the world had, of course, never been very kind to him, so it gave him unwanted joy to think ill of it in this way. So here he is saying that the world had, of course, never been very kind to him. That means he was not happy at all, because the world never gave him happiness in any way, and he was leading a miserable life in this world, and says it gave him an unwanted joy to think ill of it in this way. That means at the same time he was very happy thinking ill about the world, that it is a rat trap and all the people going to be trapped in it, which is the world itself. So unwanted joy means unaccustomed or unusual joy, and says it became a cherished pastime of his. So thinking ill like this, he became very happy, and still walking through the road thinking that the whole world is rat trap for the people and they are going to get trapped in it, and he is not only the one who trapped in it. And says during many daily plodding to think of people he knew who had let themselves be caught in the dangerous snare, and of other who were still circling around the bait. So here he is saying that during many daily plodding, that means when he was walking all alone and feeling lifeless or helpless in this world, he used to think about this world, which is rat trap according to him, and thought about the people that they are going to be get caught by this dangerous snare, that means a trap. So he called this rat trap the world, and still others are waiting to be attracted by these baits and get caught, called the world. One dark evening, he was trudging along the road. He caught sight of a little grey cottage by the roadside, and he knocked on the door to ask shelter for the night. So here the author is saying that one dark evening he was trudging along the road. That means one fine day he was walking along the road with great difficulty, and suddenly he caught of a little grey cottage by the roadside. That means suddenly he saw a small shelter by the roadside, and says he knocked on the door to ask shelter for the night. So he was feeling so tired and lethargic because he was walking along the road and it was dark also outside. So he decided to take some rest for the night, and then he approached the grey cottage and knocked on the door firmly, and says nor was he refused. So when he knocked on the door and asked for the shelter for the night, then the landlord of the house allowed him to come in. Instead of the sour faces which ordinarily met him, the owner, who was an old man without wife or child, was happy to get someone to talk in his loneliness. So here he is saying that instead of the sour faces which ordinarily met him, that means earlier this vagabond used to knock on the door of the other's house as well, but nobody gave him shelter and showed him sour faces because nobody liked him just because of his physical appearance. And says the owner of the house, who was an old man without wife or child, that means when it comes to this grey cottage owner, and he was an old man and he was living without wife or child there in this house, became very happy and let him in, because the old man was feeling alone, and now he was feeling very happy because he could talk to somebody or to have a company to talk something. Further he says immediately he put the porridge pot on the fire and gave him supper. So as the old man was very happy to let him in, so then immediately he put the fire, that means he put a dish consisting of oats and starting cooking the dish, and then served him supper. So what do you mean by supper? That means the meal that you have at night. Then he carved off such a big slice from tobacco roll that it was enough both for the stranger's pipe and his own. So as the old man started serving night dinner for the vagabond, then he carved off such a big slice from the tobacco. That means he cut a big piece from the tobacco roll and gave him, and while having dinner both started smoking together with the different pipe. So this owner of the house used to smoke tobacco a lot, and he was very kind and hospitable person, and that's why he gave him food and shelter so that he can talk to him, because he was feeling alone in that house. And says finally he got out an old pack of cards and played mules with his guest until bedtime. So after having dinner, the old man got out old pack of cards and invited this stranger to play the game called mules. So both of them started playing the game for some time. Further, he says the old man was just as generous with his confidences as with his porridge and tobacco. So here the author is saying that the old man was just as generous with his confidences. That means the old man was very kind and supportive, and he had shared his food and tobacco with the person to whom he don't know. And while playing cards, he started sharing his secret with him, and says the guest was informed at once that in his days of prosperity, his host had been a crofter at Ramjo Iron Works and had worked on the land. So as the old man started sharing his secrets with his guest, and says he informed him at once that in his days of prosperity, that means once he had a lot of money and happiness, his host had been a crofter at Ramjo Iron Works. That means the old man, who was the owner of this cottage, told the vagabond that he used to work at Ramjo Iron Works and had worked on the land. So his boss gave him a small piece of land there, and he had worked on the land. So in those days he earned a lot of money by working at Ramjo Iron Works, and then he used to work on land also, and he was leading good life at that time. Now that he was no longer able to do day labor, it was his cow which supported him. So here the author is saying that now this old man was not able to do day labor. That means he was not able to do hard work for the entire day. And then he bought a cow, and it was his cow which supported him. That means he used to sell the milk in the market and earn money every single day. So in this way he was leading a peaceful life, but at the same time he was alone. So he had a cow and gave him the milk, and says yes, that bossy was extraordinary. That means he is calling his cow as bossy, and says it was very different and special from other cows. So extraordinary means amazing or very unusual, and says she could give milk for the creamery every day, and last month he had received all of 30 kroner in payment. So here he is saying that his cow was very different and she could give milk for the creamery every day. That means a cow gave him very thick and thick milk, and that milk was required for the making sweets and other creams. So this old man used to sell the milk in the market and said to the vagabond that last month he had received all of 30 kroner in payment. That means he had earned 30 kroner in last month. So kroner is a Swedish currency. The stranger must have seemed incredulous, for the old man got up and went to the window. So here the author is saying that the old man, who was the owner of the small cottage, told him the story about how much money he had earned and all. So the stranger must have seemed incredulous. That means it was very surprising thing for the vagabond to hear that. And then the old man got up and went to the window. So the old man stood up from his place and started walking towards the window, and says, took down a leather pouch which hung on a nail in a very window frame, and pick out 3 wrinkled 10 kroners bill. So in order to prove that whatever he told the stranger is completely true, and then he stood up and went straight to the window, and there was a small leather bag which was hung on a nail in the window frame, and took out 30 kroner bills. So the old man thought the stranger won't believe whatever the old man said, and then the old man took out 3 wrinkled or crushed 3 10 kroner bills from the small bag and showed him that this much amount he had been earned last month by selling milk only. So wrinkled means lined or crumbed. So in this way the old man informed his guest where he earned the money and where he kept the money, and even showed him the money as well. Further he says these he held up before the eyes of his guest, nodding knowingly, and then stuffed them back into the pouch. So here the author is saying that these he held up before the guest of his eyes. That means the old man was showing him 3 kroner bills, and still his guest was looking at the bills, and then the beggar nodding his head knowingly by saying, oh yes, you are right, and says, and then stuffed them back into the pouch. That means the old man put these 3 kroner bills back into the leather pouch and hung on a nail in the window frame, and says the next day both men got up in good season. So after that both the beggar and the old man went to the bed, and then the next day both men got up in the good season. That means both men woke up early in the morning, and says the crofter was in hurry to milk his cow, and the other man probably thought he should not stay in bed when the head of the house had gotten up. So the crofter was in a hurry to milk his cow. That means as soon as the owner of the house, the old man, woke up, he went to the cow shed to milk of his cow, and says the owner says the other man probably thought that he should not stay in the bed. That means the vagabond or the rat trap seller thought that he should not stay in bed anymore because the owner of the house had already woken up and it was early morning. So I hope you like the first part of the chapter. Let's look at the second part of the chapter in my next video. For more informative videos, do subscribe my channel, hit the bell icon so that you get notified whenever new video will be uploaded. So thank you so much for watching once again. Stay safe, stay healthy.